have to learn to love thyself. Calm, self-love, and forgiveness. My best advice.
Exploring the human journey.
Woodrow Wilson was once heard to say, "If you lose your wealth, you have lost nothing. If you lose your health, you have lost something. But if you lose your character, you have lost everything." And the sledgehammers of life that hit us cover up that character, and we forget who we are. And this space, this home, the sledgehammer that took my son from this planet, has now transmuted into a space of hope, a space of joy, a space where I pursue calm. Because if I do not save me, if I do not learn who I am and have self-worth and self-love, I am worth nothing to anyone, especially my son and his legacy. Almost 13 years ago, my son walked upstairs and shot himself. Died in my arms at age 13. And it has been my pursuit to find life again, to be curious about life again. Because if you're not curious, you don't want to wake up the next morning. If you're not curious and you're sitting in your darkest moment, you will also choose to leave this world. Build a space for yourself. Build a sanctuary for yourself and hold yourself so valuable that nothing and no one can break that peace for you. My name is Kimberly Tocco. I am a metaphysical physician, a spiritual psychologist, #1 bestseller. And I help families and individuals who have been through hardships start a new chapter.
I learned in conversations with God that grief is a natural emotion.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about love and fear and envy, and he talks about grief. And if we don't express that, let it flow through us, it'll hold up and can cause physical issues in our body. And
Grief is love with no place to go. Simply put.
Yeah.
So you have to put it somewhere.
So this paradigm we have, we're these human characters that we're playing. I think we're spiritual beings, human experience.
Mm-hmm.
But we choose to come here to have this experience. And
Yes.
some of us, it feels like we're taking like the super hard, I'm going to see how much I can put on myself in this lifetime.
Yes.
And you've had that experience. You've lost a loved one.
Yes.
I too have lost a loved one. And what do we do with these things?
Right.
That's what gets us to go forward. What I love about your work in the world is tenacity. You're all about tenacity.
Yes.
So let's start there. Give me some perspective on why you feel like you want to be a contribution to consciousness. Why do you want to help people? Why do you want to teach people to be tenacious?
Yes. So 2 years after I lost my son, to put a very long story short, when I was sitting there trying to figure out what I had left, what could I offer anyone? I was completely broken, for all intents and purposes, also dead. So what could I possibly offer anyone? What did I have left? I had one thing, my tenacity.
So you're not going to give up. You're going to keep moving. Because we know so many people that just shut down.
Right.
I mean, I have a friend that just is unable to move forward. And it's like, wow. And I feel your grief and I get it. But tenacity, you got to like, well, and I've heard you say, I'm going to honor his life by moving forward. Tell me about that.
So in order to bring you to the place in which I need to show you how I was able to make that choice, I am going to take you to the day that I lost my son. It was a random Tuesday morning, almost 13 years ago. I have twin 3-year-old boys, and I have a 14 and a 13-year-old. Got up early that morning, domestic goddess. Fed the twins, had them in front of the television, and I'm like, I'm going to make some breakfast sandwiches for these 2 older boys. We all know that teenagers want Pop-Tarts and cereal.
Exactly.
But I made them organic breakfast egg sandwiches, and I was just so proud, and put them on the table, and I call the boys and come get breakfast. And down the stairs comes the 14-year-old, kind of the emo child, and he sits down and he's like looking at the sandwich, but he's at least looking at it. Downstairs comes Jason, my 13-year-old. This is the athlete in the family, 6'1", could pitch at 80 miles an hour,
Wow.
straight A student, most popular kid in school, handsome, always like stood up for the down dog and took care of bullies. And he comes bouncing down the stairs and he sees the breakfast sandwich. And he like sits down and he pushes it across the table. I'm like, okay. And he's like, I don't like breakfast sandwiches. Why do I always have to eat things that I don't want to eat? That typical, obviously pubescent kid.
Yeah.
Well, Gen Xer here.
Yeah.
There are starving children in the world. You will eat your breakfast. Listen to your mother. And he was angry, though. It was like, what's going on? This is a breakfast sandwich. And downstairs comes Dad and kind of gets right up into his face. And Jason stands up out of his chair in such a turbulent mood, knocks the chair over and gets right in his father's face. He's a little taller than Dad at this point. And Dad looks at him and says, "You're not going to school. You're going to wait till I get back from this union meeting and we're going to talk about this." Hair on the back of my neck was standing up because I mean, we've had issues. I've screamed at my kids. I've, spanked my whatever. There was something really off. I couldn't put my finger on it. We were due to go to Hawaii in 2 days. We'd just gone through short sales. We're finally picking ourselves up. We're going to Hawaii. He just threw a no-hitter the day before. What was going on with this kid? So anyway, I went and sat down in his chair because he didn't get back up in his chair. And he's standing between me and the stairwell, and Dad's gone already. And he looks at me, and this is the really important part. This is the part that I really need you to listen to. He looked at me and he says, "I hate you."
Whoa.
Those words had never been said in my house. We've said a lot of things to each other as a family, but those words had never been said. And I'm like, is this a teenage thing? What is going on? And then that Gen X comes in again. Yeah, well, I hate you too. Go upstairs and wait for your father. He ends up going upstairs. I hear his phone ring. And it's his dad. A few minutes later, I'm still downstairs and the landline rings. It's my husband. "Hey, go check on Jason." I'm like, "He's upstairs. Well, he's not answering the phone. I need you to go check on Jason." Just then I heard a noise, and he's a baseball player. He's throwing his baseball against the wall. And I'm like, "I just heard him throw his baseball. He's upstairs. Can you please just go check on him?" "Okay, fine." You got to remember my state of mind. I'm just like, he's just being his 13-year-old teenage self, right? He's throwing the ball against the wall. Okay, fine. Yeah, I'll go upstairs. As I'm walking up the stairs, I feel my older boy behind me. And I go straight to Jason's room. Jason's not in there. And again, that hair on the back of my neck stands up. I go into Brian's room. Go into the twins' room. Still have that phone, and he's not there. And at this point, I'm panicking. Jason, where are you?" So then I walk into my bedroom, and my bedroom's set in a way where you first walk in, on the far side you see the bed, but you're kind of directed into the bathroom. So I start walking into the bathroom, still have the phone, and I smell gunpowder. And I remembered that there's guns in the closet. And I say to my husband, "I smell gunpowder." And he's like, "Check the guns, check the guns." Go in the closet. The smell's even stronger in there. I check everything though, it's all there. Ammunition's there, guns are there. Where's the smell coming from? What is happening? And I'm screaming Jason's name at this point. My older boy's still behind me. So as I turn around and I come out of the closet, I'm facing my bed. There's windows on the other side. And I hear my son behind me say, "He's there, Mom, he's there." And I look at his eyes and I look at the direction that they're looking. On the far side, I see his feet. And I know what I'm going to see is not going to be a good thing. So I say to my boy, "Get downstairs, get the twins, take them to their room." And as I come around with my husband still on the phone, sure enough, He's laying on his left side. He has a hole right in the middle of his forehead. And all I know is my son is dead. And that's what I start screaming. And somehow I hear him say, I'm turning around, hang up the phone, dial 911. I do that. And as I'm doing that, I go and grab a towel because instinctually I got to start working on my son. But I can't do that looking at that hole, looking at his eye. So I wrap his head and I see his body taking a breath. And I'm like, oh my God, I have a chance here. I have a chance to save my son. And of course, I put it on speaker and I'm screaming, where are you? Get here, because I'm with 911 now. Remind me how many compressions. I couldn't remember. And I just start going, you know, the 1, 2, 3, something in me at least kicked in. And I'm breathing, and those first few do go into his body. But as the ambulance pulls up and the firefighters are getting out, and I try to push one more breath in him, it just comes out. And I felt him go. I felt him go, and as I felt him go, I remembered those last words I said to my son. I hate you too. You cannot be so immature and so flippant as to think that your words don't have an effect and that those words will be the last words. We have to be able to be mature enough. And I said, you know, that Gen Xer in me said, well, I hate you too. So then I start screaming, Jason, I love you. Please don't leave me. I love you. Because in those moments, it's because of me that this has happened. And they come in, pull me off my son. I run to my son's room. I gather up his comforter. I look at his shoes. I go with the twins and my older boy, and I realize in those moments, I have nothing left. That's exactly how you feel. I have nothing left. The magic is gone. And worse than that, it's my fault. Those are the things that go through the parent's head, right? No matter what the situation is, I am his mother. I should have known. I am his mother. I should have protected him. And where was God? Where were you, God? Those were the things. We ask for certain things in our life, and one of them is to protect our children. Please, God, sacrifice me over them. And that's not what happened. So, as you can imagine, in the days to follow, it became from this beautiful, happy family that was somehow picking themselves up to completely broken, nothing left, everything is gone. There was something my husband used to say through all of our trials and tribulations, losing parents, losing siblings, even our youngest child having autism. There was one thing he always said, it's okay. We will find a way. Everything works its way out. There's worse things that can happen. That was something he always said. And that night, couldn't go back to the house. We're staying at his mother's house. I looked at him and I said, is this what you meant? Is this what you meant by worse things can happen? Waiting for him to tell me it's going to be okay, because we do. We're like, this can't be real. And he looked at me and he said, yeah. It's the first time I ever saw him cry. This is what I meant. So it becomes autopilot. You know, first few days you're planning a funeral. The last entry in your baby book for your son is a funeral. No parent should ever, ever, ever have to do that. But I knew somehow I had to have this send-off for him. I had to get my shit together enough for my kid. And that's the other part. You have to get it together for your kid. You cannot allow this tragic moment to completely destroy you so you no longer have anything in life. You can't, because there's other people relying on you. Your own child is relying on you not to allow this to destroy you. So that kind of became the first things. What can I do so that they don't forget my child? You don't want people forgetting your child. And we did. We had a beautiful send-off. stunning send-off. Hundreds and hundreds of people came and said their little pieces. But then what do you do when that part's over? It becomes the 1 minute at a time, 5 minutes at a time. And there were many times that I dove into the alcohol, that I found a pain pill. I was taking antidepressants and all those things, and they just weren't working for me. They weren't taking this liquid tar that is poured over you, and you're just burning every day in this horrible weight of sorrow and grief. And that went on for years. No matter what I did, I started a baseball charity, helping underprivileged kids play baseball. I would gather fees and gently used equipment. And I tried to share my story because on top of losing your child, it was suicide. So I had parents come to me and, I hope your son embraced Jesus because he's going to burn in hell forever.
That is the worst.
Yeah. Really? I'm like, my son's going to burn in hell, a kid who never even got to kiss a girl. And that's what really sent me down the path of, number one, where was God in those moments? Number two, my son's going to burn in hell forever for a impulsive moment, a moment of, I like to say suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Exactly.
So, the trolls that came about, normally if you lose your child through like cancer or an illness or a car accident, they flock to your home and they bring you food. Oh, no, not our house. What really happened there? What's going on in that house? They thought the worst things because of the stigma of suicide. It has been drilled in our heads that if you even an inkling of wanting to take your life, you're mentally ill and you're sick and you're possessed by demons.
Yeah.
That is not it.
I was given a religious narrative, and all of those things I was taught. And, if you want a one-way ticket to hell, kill yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so we didn't kill ourselves out of fear. We don't want to go to hell.
No.
The worst narrative is somebody telling you that your kid goes to hell.
Mm-hmm.
That happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
When our son passed, we had a computer set up, and we were doing a Zoom. And there were other people that wanted to check in and share in this experience of celebration of his life. And his favorite candy was Skittles. Mm-hmm. So there was a family member that was on the computer and kept unmuting herself. And I would say, we need to keep it on mute because everybody can hear you. What? I can't hear it. What? So she unmuted herself. So at some point, I can't deal with this. And I hold the Skittles up and I say, when I have a Skittles, I think that it was his favorite candy and it's the colors of the rainbow. He would always say, Dad, it's the colors of the rainbow. And so whenever I have a Skittles, I will think, someday I'll see him again, somewhere over the rainbow. And in really loud volume off the computer, I hear, he might be over the rainbow, but he's not in heaven. And I had people messaging me, who is that old person on the phone? How dare they? It was the narrative that we were given.
Yeah.
This earth mythology that you get one life and then there's some judgment.
Yeah.
Did you have that as an understanding at that time? Did you have the feeling like that was the truth, or did you have a different idea at that time? At
that time, I struggled just with the guilt, right? Honestly, those thoughts of, my son burning in hell, and when people would say something to me, but I instantly, my whole entire body would be like, no, that is not true.
Yeah.
Something in me knew that it wasn't true, but it also ate away at me because every time someone would say something like that or say, what really happened, well, it's because Mom said, I hate you too.
Back to the guilt. Yeah.
Totally back to the guilt.
I want to acknowledge the mom energy, which is so much different than the dad energy. Dads are sometimes, it's been said, mom's hairy helper. And the dad doesn't have the same connection that the mom does.
Right.
Wow, mom grew a baby in mom's body, and then mom has the baby, and then mom connects with the baby in a unique way that dad just can't understand. And I, as a dad, sure, I love my kids, but wow, the connection that they have with mom is so much stronger. So I can only imagine the multifold levels of grief and pain and sorrow and then judgment and guilt, 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 guilt. Because I too had the idea of like,
Yeah.
oh, what did I do wrong as a dad
Right.
for my kid to be in his circumstances? Well, now you're carrying all of this. That had to have been just a crushing experience.
It was devastating. I'm telling you, for years, I couldn't look in the mirror without feeling hatred for myself.
Oh my goodness.
And also Brian and Jason, my two older boys, I literally escaped a horribly domestic violent marriage with those two, left with a suitcase when they were 1 and 2, ran for my life for years, just had that fear and it resolved itself obviously, but all of those little things kept going through my head, Kimberly, you should have left earlier, you should have done better, and then the struggles of, working 3 jobs and feeling the guilt of putting them in preschool, just trying to support my children. And, everything comes flooding to you. I failed my son. I failed my son. I failed. That just over and over. And man, I'm telling you, the hatred for God too.
Yeah.
Like, that's what kind of went through my head is I'm a good person. I try every day to be, and these are thoughts that go through our mind. I'm a good person, and sure, there's been, the wet t-shirt contest in 19. I mean, there's little things like that we do, but what warranted this? I began to understand that it wasn't what exactly happened or where he went or how it occurred. It's what the entire planet has programmed us to believe in the evolution of how these things happen, programmed us to believe what they are. For example, suicide being the most horrible thing you can do, especially in the Bible.
Yeah.
Why though?
Yeah.
Why? How did that even come up? I'll tell you why. When Constantine first put the Bible together, and of course, church is about money, and I'm a baptized Catholic at this point. I can say these things. It was a control at that time. They needed more people to be part of the community so that they could work, right? Get their taxes off of. So they're converting pagans and they're converting different ones into this. Yeah, Yeshua is a badass dude. If we put it that way, badass dude. And the perfect example of self-love and self-worth. But he wasn't looking for followers, he was looking for leaders. But they chose to use him to get followers, right? He was the celebrity they used to get followers. If you look at it like today, you put the biggest celebrity you can to get people to buy your products, to follow you. Well, that's what they found this book to be. And then they noticed that people were so sad, so miserable, so sick, not making any money, that they were killing themselves. So how do we get them to not do that, to stay doing what we want them to do? We will tell them that that's the worst sin they can possibly do. And then we're going to make sure that we have all the masses in Latin where they can't understand it. And then we'll tell them that the book is sacred and only we can read it. See, these little things got passed down, but they continued to grow as Christianity grew. And I mean, there was a time when sacrificing yourself for your God, thousands and thousands of years ago, was an honor. It wasn't considered this most horrible sin you could ever do and that you will never have grace in God again. It goes back to the human experience. It goes back to an energy that is there. And when I say that, even science has proven that we hold at least 14 generations of trauma energy in our DNA. And so if at some point, maybe you did sacrifice yourself for God. Maybe in a past lifetime, there was a mob chasing you. You had a choice of either get killed by the mob or jump off the cliff. You chose to jump off the cliff. That is the energy of taking one's life. So I believe that this energy follows you. And yes, throughout time, they have used the weaknesses of the human to manipulate us in a way, but God would never do that. Another analogy I like to say is, you sit there and you tell your 3-year-old, don't climb on the monkey bars, you're going to get hurt. Don't climb on those monkey bars. You climb on those monkey bars, you're not going to get your treat today, this, that, the other thing. Well, what if your child does decide to climb on the monkey bars and does fall to the ground and breaks their leg? You're going to walk over and be like, yeah, I'll let you sit there. And you're going to suffer.
You're going to
let you bleed out.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. That is not God.
Yeah.
You're going to pick that child up. You're going to bind them up. You're going to give them some ice cream and be like, hey, when you're all better, we're going to try those monkey bars again.
Yeah. Yeah, the energy of this planet with the Earth mythologies is about fear. And that's the number one thing I've learned as I studied, and I'm learning different methodologies, different resources that I've looked into. It's a heavy planet.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it's so heavy, we have a word for it. It's called gravity, because you can't get off this planet. They hold you down here.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something about the human experience that we want to have this ability to have this heaviness and go through it. And I don't know if in the soul realm, if it's like an obstacle course we're trying to put ourselves through metaphysically, spiritually, if it's if there's an experience that we want to have, if there's emotions we want to feel. Because if you're always in a afterlife state of bliss, what would it be like to play a game where you're like, oh, I can feel shame and I can feel grief and I can feel, all these energies.
Yes. As a soul, we know unconditional love. As a soul, we are God. We are a tiny droplet of God. We know exactly what God's love is.
Yeah.
But we can only conceptualize pain. We can only conceptualize joy. We can only conceptualize desire and passion. So this is our favorite place to be. This is the place we go to conceptualize all those things we want to experience. So when you spoke earlier, like, why would we choose this path and the heaviness and the game of being human? So I'm going to go back to, let's say you had a lifetime where you jumped off the cliff and you took your life and that energy is with you, and pop your back into your soul and you're like, okay, I cheated on my husband in that one life. I jumped off the cliff. I've got this energy now. And if I go back there, it's going to be there. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to plan my life. I'm going to pick these two humans for my parents because he's really messed up and he's going to challenge me to look at myself. I'm going to choose her though because I really need some nurturing. Oh, and hey, soul family, yeah, I'm going to plan this lifetime. I need you to come down, and when I'm off track, pop into my life. Push me back on track. Our soul knows exactly the path that we're supposed to live to help clear out and transmute that energy. We plan it. A lot of people don't think that we do, but we do. There's two caveats: amnesia and free will. So in this game, when we've already reached a certain level and, oh man, we ran out of lives and we're popping back up and we've played the game. We know how the game works. We got to plan it better this time. We got to make sure we have the right players this time, but there's free will and we don't remember why we're playing the game when we get here. So we will make the choices that weren't exactly set for us, but that's why we rely on our soul family, children, parents, lovers, to put us back on path. The whole point of life is to see how you can be challenged yet stay in self-love and self-worth. If you think about Yeshua, once again, what did he truly teach? It wasn't that, if you can be a healer and have all these miracles. Yes, he did that, but he did that because he loved himself enough to have faith in himself enough to show the world that he did have the energy to heal others. But you have to stay in self-love no matter what is thrown at you.
Beautiful. That is such an important message to receive in this lifetime, is you have to love yourself. And in that Christian narrative that I was given was, no greater love has a man than he give his life for another. So it was all about doing things for other people, which puts you in this state of like, wow, I'm never getting my needs met, but that's okay because at least I'm doing God's will. So I couldn't even have goals or plans. What are your goals, David? What are you going to, I just want to do the Lord's will. So I spent a whole lifetime trying to do other people's, I got to help people. I got to be a good guy. David's a good boy. And so we do all these things. And then if something doesn't go right, it was like, I did the recipe. I don't understand. How could my son be a drug addict?
I'm a good person.
I don't get it. It must be my fault. Did I not do the recipe right? So then we get into fretting and we call the pastor and, come and, what did I do wrong? Well, what if you and this other soul agreed beforehand in a pre-birth planning, tell you what, I need to have a dark journey. You're strong enough and have enough courage to be my father. Will you be my father? Oh, yeah. And that's a hypnotherapy session I had where I realized that and went,
Exactly.
okay. So that takes the pressure off of me and allows him to have his free will choice or his soul journey choice.
Yes.
And I can't understand it, and I can't remember it because of the amnesia, but I do have the feeling. So when I hear that lady on Zoom say your son isn't over the rainbow, or he might be over the rainbow, but he's not in heaven, I'm okay with that because that's the narrative that person's living in. And was I angry? Sure. Did it irritate me? Yeah. But did I understand why? Yeah. It's because that was the point of reference that person had. So be it. I know for me, I was like, it's about me learning to be forgiving of them because they have to walk in those shoes however they want to.
Yeah.
But it comes to self-love. So that is my biggest deconstruction from that narrative is instead of I'm supposed to love you and them and everyone else, you're supposed to love yourself first. Because when your cup is full, it can overflow into others. And that's the biggest paradigm shift. How did you incorporate that self-love into the shame and the guilt?
Oh, yeah. So transmuting the pain, transmuting the suffering. I remember it was 2 years after I lost my son, and it was January of 2013. And I'm sitting there on the couch with a glass of wine, watching some nonsense on TV in this dark, dingy rental because, you know, I hadn't worked. My poor husband was working firefighter job and some side jobs because I couldn't. And I finally lifted my head up because I'm just like, I'd cut my arms, I'd cut my wrists. I was suicidal before my son, even more so afterward. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, look around, Kim. And so I looked at my twins who are now 5 and they were playing. How are they? They're happy. Wait a minute. And then I looked at my older boy and they went everywhere together. They were in the same grade together. They were 12 months apart. Jason was like his hero because he had a lot of bullies too. But he was doing better than me. He had more friends. He'd gotten stronger through this. But it was when I looked at my husband. He was pale, he was thin, he was gray. He was looking at me like I was going to break. And I was like, and then I heard, enough, Mom. Enough, Mom. To me, that was my son. Enough of the pity party. Get up. Get up. 41 years old. And I'm sitting here wasting time. Suffering. And so I'm like, okay, what can I do? We'd had a short sale. We had a bankruptcy after losing Jason. We're in the shitty rental. I need to be able to give something to my family. What can I do? I heard on the radio about an extenuating circumstance loan because at the time we had the big boom, the short sales, the foreclosures. There was some extenuating circumstance loans that you could apply for. No one had gotten one yet in the state of Arizona, but for 2 months I worked with this woman. For 2 months, sent 1,000 emails and they wanted to see my son's death certificate, the obituary. They wanted proof that we had been through hardships.
Because you're going to scam the system
right,
now.
Right.
Oh, just kidding.
They needed to see like that he didn't have bank account. I mean, you should. Yeah, they needed to see everything. March, I think it was March 3rd of 2013, 2 months after that, I got the call. We were approved. We were approved. So all I had to do was call one of my real estate agent friends and I'm like, I'm calling. And they're like, no. I'm like, what do you mean no? Number one, I've never seen one actually close. Even though you're approved, it's not going to close, Kimberly. And number two, we're going to take you down. We're going to get you under contract. It's going to fall through and you guys are going to be even more miserable.
Oh, boy.
So I'm like, okay, well, then I'll just call a regular agent. They all said the same thing. You're not going to get an extenuating circumstance loan to close. I'm sorry, we can't help you. So I took our tax return money and a change jar. And I got through real estate school in 18 days.
Oh, wow.
And by March 31st, I had my license. I was able to identify a home, convince the seller that I could get it to close. And June 1st, I had those keys. watching those twins run around in bright windows. The house needed work, don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But there was light in there, and my older boy is looking for his room, and this was the pivotal moment. When I gave those keys to my husband, he had his feet again. He had a foundation again. He had some place to put his family that no one could take from him and that belonged to him. And I felt joy for the first time. A tiny little flicker. I'm like, this is what they mean by service, serving others. It's this feeling. I want more of that. And that's what I became. I started borrowing clothes from friends because I didn't have the business clothes. I'd been a stay-at-home mom. I have an autistic son, and the older boy was struggling. And that year I made Rookie of the Year. Doubled again the next year, doubled again the next year. Won all sorts of awards. My top year, 2018, sold 15 million in sales, caught the eye of HGTV. And they put me on a show, and that's when I said, it's time to write my book.
Awesome.
Because no one's really going to listen to a sad little woman in the corner. But they're going to listen to a sad woman who has been able to overcome.
Yeah, that's powerful.
The book actually is taking little paragraphs that I wrote under a pseudonym that first year after losing Jason, and all the crazy thoughts that I had. The suicidal thoughts, the blaming thoughts, and then I reflect back on it as the healed woman at the time that I wrote it. But I still wasn't sure about it because, again, this is the first time people are going to hear me say my last words to my son were, I hate you too. We'd had enough judgment, and we'd had enough ups and downs and different things that had happened that I wasn't sure if I could expose the ugly of the story. And when I started my own podcast, I realized that it's the ugly of the story that the people need to hear. It's the part that people don't want to share because they're afraid to share. They're afraid of the judgment that the other people need to hear because they've been through the same thing and they think the same thing. That's the road I went down.
Well, that's the identification. It's like, oh, I see that you understand me. And that's the best thing we can get as people is going, oh, you understand me. Because it's hard for you to talk to somebody else when they're like, wow, all my kids are great. They're all doctors and lawyers and we make a bunch of money. We go on these great family trips. And you're like, so you don't understand what I've been through. So, of course you can be in a position of maybe not having empathy for me. But wow, when somebody sees what you've gone through and go, me too. That's connection, that's community. And that's a place to be of service. So you create, which book did you write first? Is it
Overcome? Memoirs of a Suicide. And it's interesting, the typewriter that you see here, this is actually me, his glove and the typewriter. It's actually sitting over there too. Even though in 2018 I decided that, yes, I was going to write this book, and I filmed HGTV and I'm really up there with EXP. I won the, humanitarian, all these achievements, right? These achievements is what kept me going, but I was ignoring me inside, the healing inside. You talked about serving, I'm going to serve, I'm going to serve, I'm going to serve, but I wasn't serving me.
Oh, I can help others and then I'll be a good person and transmute my grief into my pain.
You go from victim to martyr to hero to, oh shit, I forgot about me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was so important for me to do the podcast and have a team, and my little kids would come up and not right now, I'm working.
Yeah.
I know you need this right now, but there's this other person that I need to do. And it just, something wasn't coming together. I was still suicidal. I was still having many days where I was fighting off, I can't do this, I can't be here. I was still suffering. Why was I still suffering? I was doing all these wonderful things, I'm achieving, but I was still suffering. And I began to see how my podcast and sharing my story was affecting others. And I also began to see that it was therapeutic for me. Because when I would talk to someone, I'd be like, wow, that's where I was a few years ago. Oh my God, but where am I now? And then I would talk to other people and I'd be like, why can't I be more like you? Why can't I get healed? So I had to find what was missing. So I launched my book March 11th, my birthday of 2020, because March, my son passed away March 22nd. So March became a month
Wow.
that was really difficult. Those holidays, and, we always like, oh, here it comes. And again, choosing almost ahead of time to suffer. It's coming. That day's coming. I'm going to have to get in my bed and cry and feel sorry. And yeah, we can have our pity parties, but there was enough. I was tired of it. I was tired of that. So I decided to make March this beautiful month, launching his story, launching his book, building this legacy, because once you put it in writing, it's there forever. And I took it to a stage, and I had people on stage telling their story. And it was probably one of the most successful and magnificent moments when it came to the story. But then COVID hits 3 days later.
Yeah, I was going to say March 13th is when there was a
March
mandate.
13th.
We all had to. We all had to take on the cloak of fear as a collective. So you launched this thing, this joy space, and then now once again, you're having something that is coming against you. You're having another obstacle to go through.
Sledgehammer.
A sledgehammer.
Sledgehammer. Wow. And so, boom. Nope, Kim, you're not going to go on tour. Nope, Kim, you're not going to keep expanding your real estate. Nope, not happening. And I went exactly to that place. Why? I've helped hundreds of families at this point. I've done pro bono in real estate for families at this point. I've given them a lot of cases. I'm giving my own commission because of what I went through back towards their closing costs. I think at that point it was about $250,000 of my own money back towards closing costs to help families. And I'm like, these traumatic things, I mean, they're hard on a marriage. They're hard on a family.
Well, that was another question as far as how the family dynamic is.
Yeah. And many times we would come to each other and we'd be like, kids have been through enough. What are little things that we may have for or against each other mean nothing right now. We get along enough and we care enough about the family unit to worry about passion and desire and romance later. It becomes not as important as the thriving children, right? And we didn't want to have them go through that. So Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock, sometimes the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the one, the few. So you do have to really not be so selfish, but then again, you do have to be selfish enough to heal thyself.
That's always the balance, isn't it? How do I integrate in community and still meet my needs, but meet the needs of everyone else? Because it can't just be selfish narcissism where I only focus on me, but yet if you don't focus on you and you're focusing on, it's just balance.
Yeah, but both have to be willing to do that too. But it was at that time where I was just like, I'd started my spiritual journey and I'd been learning gateway healing. And I'm like, I'm getting into this. I'm learning different ways. I'm learning about religion and I'm doing all these things right. And so what happened? Why God? Why? So like everyone else, shut everything down. And I decided for the first time, since I couldn't distract myself with work or healing or helping this family, I actually had to sit down and look at myself in the mirror. And I still didn't like myself. And I said, okay, I need to expand my gifts that I know are there. I need to expand my abilities and I need to find out what's going on and why I can't get to a place of calm. Because there was still so much burning inside. I really didn't forgive myself. So I started going to Delphi Metaphysical University. It's located in Georgia. It started in the 80s by Patricia Hayes. And there's her daughter carries it on now, but it's basically a place of light. It teaches you how to use your heart energy, to expand your heart energy and to really dig in and find those moments and things and that you don't like about yourself and why don't you like them and why are they there. And became a metaphysical physician. One of the last few that will ever be trained by Kimberly, the energia, manipulating energy. And I began to realize that since our bodies remember the trauma through energy, that was the key. Again, instead of taking that day and being, oh, it's day and I don't want to know, and the death days and the holidays, I'm going to make it beautiful. March 22nd, I do something beautiful. Last year, I did the article for So Scottsdale magazine talking about him, and in front of the statue of the angel by the air park. We take a trip, we go out of town, we light fireworks, and I'm not saying that I at some point maybe don't drink like 4 glasses of wine during the day. I mean, these things happen, but unless you start putting something different in there, it's just going to sit there and stay. If you choose to suffer that day, that suffering will stay. But if you choose to celebrate that day, you're starting to change the energy and program your body to feel calm, to feel joy. That's what I had to figure out.
That's so good. Our son's birthday was December 22nd, just a few days before Christmas. And so this last December 22nd, we said, you know what we're going to do for his birthday? We're going out to a comedy show and we're just going to laugh.
Yes.
He loved comedy.
Yeah.
And so I love that. You're going to put yourself in a place of like, well, what's a celebration? What's a joy space? I promise on the other side of the veil, of the other side of this human experience, they're over there going, we are, not only are we good, we're super happy. You guys, don't you wish you could be where we are? And we also acknowledge you have to continue that journey playing your character, playing your life experience. So I don't hold the energy of like, oh, sorrowful grief. I hold the energy of like, wow, I can cry right now because I have so much gratitude and love for that experience as a father for this beautiful soul. But I also realize that was something that he chose. It was his choice. I don't know that in my son's case, it was an overdose. I do think it was a conscious overdose. I do think he knew what he was doing, and he had a lot of torment, a lot of issues in his life. I feel like he probably left his body and went, oh, that just happened. Oh, I didn't expect that. And that just got real. Which is there's maybe some commonality there. But in your son's case, you had detailed out he was irritable, he was frustrated, he said things that were completely out of character. There has to be something in this soul agreement where he wanted you to have an experience as a mother, and he probably in the soul realm says, no, I love you too much to do that. And you probably said, nope, you got to do this for me. I hear so many of these accounts in hypnotherapy sessions where they go, we had an agreement, and the other person went, I love you so much I can't hurt you in that way. And the soul says, no, I want you to do that. So have you had a reflection, a period? Tell me what you think on the other side, this agreement side as souls. What do you think that dynamic has happened?
I have a beautiful story when it comes to that. So here we are, COVID, March 2020. Everything shut down, can't do my things. And again, I'm suffering. I'm not healed. One of the things I did is I looked at my twins. I looked at my older boy, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to take all my savings. I'm going to build this badass pool. And that's when I felt my son again. That's when I felt Jason. And I heard this, yes, Mom, build the pool. I'm like, okay, that's random. I designed it. I put special symbols in it. Jason loved turtles. Hawaii, so put a Hawaiian turtle, the gecko, the mo'o, which is why I put this here.
Oh, beautiful.
Jason is the turtle. I'm the butterfly, and together we're the gecko or the mo'o, and the mo'o is in Hawaii the symbol of the dragon that takes the spirits to heaven. So I'm building this beautiful pool, the pool of my dreams, and I feel also Mother Mary. I mean, I've always loved her. But there was something about Mary, and you talked earlier about mothers and children. And I get the statue of Mother Mary, and I plant 12 rose bushes, one for each of her stars, and I hear, daughter, I split my own soul to birth my son, and I had to watch him die too. That's what it is with a mother. We split a piece of our soul into that child. And when we lose that child, a piece of our actual soul is gone too. But their DNA is still with us. You got to remember the interaction of the energy. Growing that baby, we're exchanging that DNA. We are part of their DNA. So that was like the first hint. So Jason has a piece of my soul. If you think about it that way. I incarnated here as a woman to give birth to 4 sons who each have a piece of my soul that will be part of their energy now forever as they incarnate here on earth. That's very interesting. So Mother Mary became a great source of inspiration to me. The sun became a source of inspiration to me, and I got in my finished pool and I started meditating in it every day. And one morning in the summer, 2020, I was out there on the Baja Shelf and I heard, "Mom, you know why I did it, don't you?" And I said, "So that you could save me, isn't it? So you could save me. Because I have had many past lives of struggling with suicide, and that energy has followed me. And even before my son came into this lifetime, starting at age 17, I struggled with suicide. I struggled with self-hatred. I had a really rough childhood. And he came in here knowing that if there was one thing that was going to make me choose life, it is knowing that my DNA, my soul, is a part of my son. So if I choose life this entire lifetime, I will break it for me, for him, for the rest of my children. They will never, ever, ever have to deal with that energy again."
Oh, I love that. I hear so many of these karmic journeys that souls go on where they didn't accomplish something that they wanted to in the life. Maybe it was just something happened, a free will incident, or something happens where they're like, yeah, then they'll have, whether it's a near-death experience or a hypnotherapy experience, they'll have this encounter with their soul guide, and they're like, yeah, you remember you wanted to go, and you my friend Jamie Clark is a medium here in town, and he says, yeah, he's wonderful. He says, well, I view it as they self-graduate themselves. And, so there's no shame in that. But we do get to the other side and we go, oh man, I did it again. All right, well, let's go through and see if we can break that energy again. And what a profound revelation to say, there was some energy I needed to break as a soul. And your courageous soul playing Jason had to say, I'm willing to be this to help you on your journey. Wow.
And there's also, the part that says, if I would have been able to choose life and hold it together through those times, that maybe he could have also at the same time. But honestly, even though we had things going for us, we were getting back up on our feet. My oldest boy was struggling with some serious PTSD because of what he saw when he was little. My youngest boy is autistic. We have therapies 4 times a month. Jason, for all intents and purposes, never showed signs of anything. Kept it bottled up inside. But yeah, it's like I looked at Jason as a soul and said, if I'm faltering, if I'm not going to make it, you need to come in. That was true, because I remember sitting in the closet without my kids there or anything a couple of times and having a gun in my hand, because it was so hard to go through the things that we went through. And
I really want to acknowledge your journey. Thank you for having the space in which you're sharing what you've been through. It does help people to hear, okay, someone understands that. I mean, it's one thing to feel victimized by life circumstance. It's another thing to say, okay, I'm not going to be the victim of this. I'm going to understand that there's something greater at plan here. And now you're giving back. I know you have a second book. Tell me about that book. Is it The Tenacious Angels?
Tenacious Angels, building off of tenacity again. Was able to build, get into a house with my family, and I was like, hey, I enjoy this, I'm good at that. And I'm sitting in front of my computer again. What do I have to offer a client? I am extremely intelligent. I have a lot of background experience and things, but I've never sold real estate, right? Why is someone going to use me? And I heard that voice again. Because Kimberly, you can put yourself in their shoes. you know exactly how they feel, because you won't give up until you get the job done. Tenacious Real Estate. And then it was Tenacious Productions, Tenacious Angels, because I wanted to have a 501c3. So when COVID hit and I was going through metaphysical school, so many profound things started to happen. So many things like, they talk about a Kundalini awakening, but my Christos, my Christ light was just, I finally understood my purpose. I finally understood I need to help others realize that they can transmute the suffering. Pain is inevitable. Suffering's the choice. And by doing that transmutation, by helping them understand why these things happen, I can help them also find their purpose again. Help them pull out that ugly tar energy and replace it with something different, something new. And I did cross paths with an individual who challenged my faithfulness in a marriage and in a family. And I believe that was part of the lesson too. And I do talk about this in my book, how I began to realize that I'm little God. I'm a little piece of God. All of us are a little God here.
Yeah.
And when we say we are one, it's because all in all, we are of the same substance. I love to use the word alchemy when it comes to energy and how we transmute, because first there was the word and the word was God. But what does that mean? If God is an energy and a consciousness and it's vibrating at a certain rate in order to make matter, it makes a sound, right? So for me, putting my words into this book is alchemy. And as someone reads it, both books, they will be lifted by the first book and empowered to realize they can overcome it. And the second book helps them realize the deeper purpose of life and why we are here, and that we never end, and that we never die, and that you will be challenged. And sometimes it is through the soul of another human being, but you also have to use your discernment, because those things can be distractions too.
Yeah.
You can only be a victim once. After that, you're a volunteer. Right?
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
And it's Ashley Judd said that one.
Yeah.
And I always like to say it is not what you go through, but it is how you come through it. So before you, again, talking about a marriage, before you make that choice to just selfishly take advantage of a feeling or selfishly take advantage of a moment or an opportunity that you may see, you really have to look at your sole purpose and why you're here. And right now, I have other children that I owe that to. I have another human being who has sacrificed years and years to make sure that I'm okay and that I'm growing. And that's what made me really understand and heal, is that I truly have to love myself and not be so selfish about my desires, but be selfish about my healing. There's a difference. I think people distract themselves with desires and healing. So Tenacious Angels is another raw, ugly look at maybe how we can be distracted by passions, but have to refocus and put ourselves back into purpose.
I like the concept that I've heard the teaching that the attraction we have to someone else is for there's some movement in our lives. And it's, instead of saying, oh, that means we're supposed to engage intimately, it could just merely mean, well, what is there for me to experience in this moment, in this person? Even this conversation, we haven't met each other prior to this. I've been aware of your social media presence, and I see the strength that you have, and I see the character you play. You have a very outgoing. You have a physical beauty about you.
Yes.
But there's an attraction for who you are as a person. So I contacted you. I said, let's find out, who are you? What are you doing?
Yeah.
And then I knew that you had this commonality, and so I'm like, that's the interest I have. What have you done to transmute your pain? So thank you for sharing that today.
Yeah.
And the things that we go through is like, now I see why we were intended to meet, is to create this conversation so that we can learn ourselves, we can help other people. Right. It's just the beauty of the human journey.
The other thing I do teach in book 2 is a lot of people get confused about imagination. We talk about visualization and manifestation, but imagination is kind of pushed off as something that we make up, right? Imagination is something that we push off as, it's children have imagination. Imagination is our divinity. this is a processor. It can't make up anything. These are images and things fed from where? Past lives, from memory. So in this book, I do share a very deep and imaginative past life from the beginning of time, from the beginning of when the world was created, when Gaia, I like to say, birthed herself, the time before Atlantis, and also a time that mimics what we're going through today when it comes to ego and the fall of Atlantis and the fall of what's happening today and how we should step into self-love. It's so simple when you think about it. Self-love is really all you have to have, and you can figure it out from there. It's still not going to be easy, but you can figure it out from there.
Brilliant. I love that. It is so important for us to realize, fill your cup up. Then you can fill the cup of those around you. You can be of service. You can do business. All right. As we are closing it up, you said that you have some intuitive giftings. You have some things.
Yes.
Tell me about that. And then you mentioned you might want to have the opportunity to look at some photos of my loved one, my son that passed. So tell me about that scenario.
So look, I've always been very in tune. I've always been gifted, but I was raised a Jehovah's Witness, taught that that was very evil, and I stuffed it down. And then, of course, later in life, I became Catholic, and I've done some palm reading, but I never really gave it much thought. I dreamt of my son dying twice a year before he died. And I've always, that gut instinct, and I just should have paid attention to it. So as I began to open up and I went to the university and I learned about past life regression, how to do it, we also learned how to tap into a picture. Turns out to be something I'm very good at. So someone will send me a picture. Most of the time I'll get a feeling or energies or even a picture in my mind, or sometimes a word of what they were feeling in that moment, sometimes even what I should be delivering. And usually how I do it is I'll get a picture. I've been prepared. I know that I'm going to work with a client, and I'll get a picture, and I like to start texting sentences and having it just flow, or I'll be on a Zoom with them and I'll have them just flow. So that's what I'll have you do. I'd love to look at a picture of your son, and I'll get as much as I can from one. I'll have you share a couple of them with me. He's trying really, really hard here. He's trying to have you feel joy, and he wants to. There's a lot of doubt. He doesn't think he can do it, but he's doing it for you guys at that point. This way?
Yeah.
He's tired. There's a lot of internal struggle, pain. Oh, I feel like he's looking at something, looking through something. There's a little hope here.
So he had just been picked up at the airport. He had been stranded in Mexico City because he went down there and he was on some sort of a experience where he was out of his mind, and he got rescued by his mom.
There's the hope.
I picked him up and he was getting ready to check himself into the facility, and he was excited about getting clean and sober on that picture.
Oh, he loves you.
Yeah.
Oh God. Yeah. And he's so happy to be able to show, like, I feel like Mama, this is Mama, right?
Yeah.
He just wants you to know how much he loves you. He's actually kind of happy here.
Yeah. It's exactly the scenario on that day. He was sentient, sober, and clear, and really happy that day.
Yeah. It's beautiful. Yeah. What he's trying to do is become the strongest he possibly can become before that moment actually hits. He wanted specifically for you guys to feel proud of him. He's not vulnerable here. That's the difference. He's not vulnerable because he knows. He's putting himself in a position of as much strength and power as he can possibly have, so that when that moment hits, he's at his best self and prepared for his next lifetime. He also knows that you guys are going to be okay. He just knew, man.
Yeah.
And he went as long as he possibly could. Like this is what he wanted you to remember.
Yeah.
It's not that he wanted you to go through it. It's not that He wanted mom to go through it or any of his friends to go through it, but he, in this moment, was in a good space to say goodbye.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the picture we ended up using as memorial service. And
Very different vibe in that picture.
we gave Joy through his experience. He and I had a psilocybin ceremony experience.
Nice.
And in that, what intuitively came up in me was I've had other lifetimes where he was my teacher and I would learn from him. And this time around, he said, I've done all of these other ascended experiences. I haven't had the dark journey. And I had a hypnotherapy session that informed me that he was looking for someone to be courageous. And so that is the solace that I've had, that is the rhyme and the reason. At least it gives me a contextual ability to say, oh, now I can understand it. It doesn't mean that I don't have the emotions, but it gives me at least some framework.
100%.
So, I encourage people, if you're dealing with loss, if you're dealing with this agony, this pain, there are methodologies out there. There are modalities out there. There are ways to find that. Hypnotherapy was very important. Ayahuasca and psychedelic treatments have been very informative for me. It's allowed me to find out all those intuitive answers within, and I've had that calm and that peace. And I've had healing in my heart since then, having these experiences. So it's just something I just want people to know there are answers, there are ways.
There are.
What resources do you have for people to find out more information about the work that you're doing in the world?
First and foremost, it's calm. It is calm and peace. That is going to help anyone in any situation. And what do I mean by that? A lot of the times, the first thing we do is we turn on a bright light, we have our alarm set, and we go to our phones. And when you've been through a trauma, and you have to remember that that is in your cell structure, it is in your DNA, your body, where your mind might not be there, but your body is, you have to start in calm. This is the first thing I teach to anyone. Put your alarm on birds. Wake up before the sun. Light a candle. Sit. Start your day not in trauma. You will trigger that no matter what. And when I talk about triggers, if you're triggered by something someone says, and I'm just giving some tips here that people can use right away. If you're triggered by something someone says, it's not what they said, it's something within you. So go to the mirror right then and there and ask yourself, why am I triggered? Really look at yourself in the mirror, because the greatest love affair you can have is with the person in the mirror. Period. You have to learn to love thyself. Because if you don't, no matter what, ayahuasca, marijuana, antidepressants, you could go to the top therapist in the world. It's going to do nothing for you. Calm, self-love, and forgiveness. And silence truly brings the answers. Silence gives you a place to listen to those whispers. It's my best advice.
Beautiful. I took my pain and transmuted that into art, and I created a film called Adapting to Dive about people that are all going through something. The specific focus was wheelchair users that scuba dive. And I was able to take that and say, oh, we're all having to adapt to something in life. So we're all part of this human community, and may we love and support one another. How do people find you online? What resources do you have?
So KimT360.com. You can find everything there. I teach fit body, fit mind, fit soul, because that's the other thing. This is your temple. This is your vehicle. You must clear this out as well. Your gut produces 80% of your serotonin. If you're struggling with depression and anxiety and suicide, you got to get your gut right. And that's, I sell some natural products, a brewed tea that it cleanses. Energy is a big thing too. 5-HTP, all natural things that help me stay calm and balanced. I have several modalities that I can offer: past life regression, tarot card guidance readings. I can help you tap into your purpose. If you really want to challenge yourself, I offer 1, 2, and 3 days with me I get you for 3 days. The only time I'm not with you is when I allow you to sleep. But we will be doing silent meditations, journaling, cold plunges, hardcore workouts, silent sitting, eye gazing. There's many different modalities that I'm going to pull out all that trickster energy, and we're going to transmute it and replace it with something else. Those are some of my specialties. I would say right now my biggest pro bono work is if you've lost a child, or if you have a friend that's lost a child, and it fits my schedule, I will fly out and make sure that they have a final and beautiful send-off and give them my energy. So those are some of the things I do. I can be hired for events. I have a show that I do that's an hour and a half, and I end it with what I call the God Spark meditation that will help bring that pause in before they decide to take their life.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for the work you're doing in the world. You've said a lot, but if you were to say there's one thing I want to make sure people realize as you close, what would that one thing be for you?
Choose life. It has a ripple effect on everything and everyone around you. In this moment, and every moment thereafter, and every moment before. Choosing life, save yourself, because that's all you have to do.
Thank you so much for the conversation today.
That was fun.
To you I say, namaste.
Namaste.
Thanks for joining us here on Exploring the Human Journey. For more information, go to the website at exploringthehumanjourney.com.